Welcome back. Now, why should you buy a new construction home here in Florida in 2025? Well, I'll give you one reason. Builders are literally throwing money at people for you to buy their stuff right now. So in this video, I'm going to look at some of the incentives these big builders are offering, work out what's good, what's maybe a bit of hype, and what you should be aware of as a buyer in 2025. Now, my name's David. I am a real estate agent here in Sarasota, Florida, and I've been working in property for almost 20 years now. And I regularly post videos on this channel targeted towards buyers, sellers, and investors here in Southwest Florida. So let's kind of dive into this topic. Okay, before we start looking at some of these big builder websites, I just want to set a bit of context as to what's been happening in the market for new construction here in Florida over the past sort of 12 months. Now in 2024, we had a huge amount of stock released to the market. Okay, and why is that? Well, back when the housing boom here, the COVID housing boom kicked in Florida in 2020, 2021, there just wasn't enough homes for people, and that's why we saw this price boom in existing home sales. So developers looking at all this demand that was not being satisfied enough thought, you know what, we're going to get in here. So they started putting in the permits, getting the financing, and started building these communities, these new construction communities, these lifestyle communities in and around Southwest Florida. And they all start at the same time. So guess what? They all start finishing at the same time. All right. So that process is going to take about 3 years, 4 years, which is why in 2024, we started seeing thousands of new construction units getting released to the market. Now, that also, unfortunately for the developers, coincided with the interest rates going up. And so people's mortgages became almost 3 times as high to take out a 30-year fixed rate mortgage. So there wasn't quite the buyer demand there that the developers and the builders were hoping for. So in 2024, in a bid to try and get their product and get these buyers in, they started slashing prices. I mean, we were, if you check out here, you can have a look, 4 housing markets where giant builders cutting home prices. Texas and Florida, 2 states that boomed throughout COVID, were hit hardest by this. So all this new construction coming in, prices were being slashed in order to get buyers, sometimes up to 6 figures. Home builders unsold completed inventory, which is the highest level since 2009, and this was done early in 2025. So that's what was happening in 2024. In 2025, we're still seeing new communities being built, certainly around here in Sarasota and Manatee counties. And we're still seeing new units being released to the market. We've still got elevated mortgage rates. And so people are still a little bit cautious about jumping in to buy. So what are developers, what are the builders doing? Are they slashing prices even more? No, they are instead appealing to buyer affordability by trying to front load a load of incentives like rate buydowns, closing costs, seller credits, all this stuff in order to entice people through the door to buy their product. Now, why would they not want to start slashing prices? Well, think about it from the developer's point of view. If you're a developer and you have 30 or 40 homes coming out all at once, or certainly within a sort of short 6-month time period, what do you not want to do? You don't want to start negotiating with everybody on the first 15, 20 sales, do you? Because as soon as those benchmarks are set, well, they become comparable sales for the next buyer and the next buyer and the next buyer. And you could lose a lot of money based on your initial appraisal of this development beforehand. So instead of slashing prices, they're trying to front load the incentives, trying to work on buyer affordability. All right, and that's what we're going to look at, because that's what we're seeing now in 2025. We're seeing a lot of these builders bringing in incentives, as I say, mortgage rate buy downs, seller credits, flex cash, all this stuff, which we'll run through. Okay, so the first builder we're going to look at here is Lennar. Now, they've got something called what they call it a summer clearance of new home sales, right? Like you're buying a sofa, all right? You're just buying the house that houses the sofa. And they're offering up to $15,000 in flex credit. Now, what exactly is flex credit? Well, it's kind of like store credit that you can only use in a specific way that the builder tells you, right? So they'll give you 15,000 points or whatever. You might be able to use that towards closing costs, towards upgrades, that sort of thing. But it is still credit. So you will still have to potentially pay this back depending on what the deal is here. And a lot of these incentives that require credit usually mean that you have to go with the builder's lender, all right? Now that obviously means if you are hogtied to one lender, you don't have the whole market there. All right, so that's never usually a good point from an affordability standpoint. Just something to bear in mind there, but it can definitely work for people. At 15,000 in flex closing costs or select upgrades, if you want some new floor and it's going to be cheaper for you to use a portion of that 15,000 or all of that 15,000 to upgrade the floor to a really nice tile finish, and it's going to be cheaper to do it that way than employing a general contractor or whoever, a tiler, to come in and do it. Yeah, it could work. Could work. Okay, next we're going to head over to Taylor Morrison. Now they have a few different incentives running on at the minute. These guys' incentives tend to differ depending on the community, right? So let's have a look what we've got here. Yeah, they've got 0 interest payments for 7 months. All right, so that's obviously going to entice people in that want a cheaper, a lower mortgage as much as possible. They've got buy, build, flex. Let us pay your interest for 7 months. Again, read the small print on all this stuff. Lower your rate for the first 7 years. Again, Buydowns as well. Buydowns are an interesting one, particularly ones that kind of lock you in for the longer period. You know, I see 7 years floated out quite a lot. That can be good. You obviously can finance and know your forecast your payments for 7 years. The thing that I'm aware, it's the thing to be aware of though, is what's going to happen after that 7 years, all right, and what's going to happen in between that 7 years, because it sort of grinds my gears a bit when a lot of agents will say, oh, well, you can just refinance, you know, refinance down the line, don't worry about it. Well, that's great in a rising markets where interest rates have been, you know, at 5,000-year lows like we saw in the sort of 2010s. But now, where we're seeing an adjusting market, when we're seeing prices on a downward trend, when we're seeing elevated mortgage rates that are very, very unlikely to return to those sort of 2018, 2019 lows, you could be in real trouble after 7 years. You know, if you're underwater in your house, if you don't have the equity in there to refinance, and you then get put onto an adjustable rate mortgage, your payments could be going up significantly. So that's definitely something you want to really be 100% sure on before you pull the trigger on that type of deal. Okay, so let's head over to DR or Horton now. So these guys are obviously big builder. They've got a promo on at the minute. Back to school savings up to $25,000 in closing costs on select houses. Special interest rate of 3.875%. Now that's not bad when you consider that rates are at the minute about 6.87%. But yeah, what we got here? So available on certain DR homes, adding to that sense of urgency. You must do by the 30th of September. This is a standard retailer playbook. Everybody, you've got to create that sense of urgency. I'm sure if you went in October and asked for this deal, they would still chomp your hand off for it. Includes up to $10,000 with use of DHI mortgage. So again, these lenders, this isn't going to be an all market lender. You're going to be tied to whatever DR Horton are looking for. Again, this can work for you. I'm not saying this is going to be bad for everyone. Of course it's not. But you just need to make sure that you do your homework on everything. And what, you know, if you're doing a rate buy down, to, you know, 2-1 rate buy down, what is your payment going to be in year 3? And can you afford it? You know, can you afford when that mortgage jumps right back up? Because it's all very good for a few years. And if you only want to be in the house for a few years, you know, and you want to sell before that, that's fine. But you need to have that amortized schedule just so you're 100% confident. And if prices do continue on a downward trend, it's going to be tough to refinance as a, you know, so but yeah, so these, as you can see, all these different builders, all of these incentives, they're tied to one thing, and that's making it more affordable, making that monthly payment more affordable, and making it more affordable to buy up front. Okay, they're not, none of these are slashing prices. Okay, and they're not slashing prices because of what I already mentioned earlier on. That's because they don't want to set a precedent on all these new homes that they've got coming out in the sort of next 6 to 12 months. Because believe me, I mean, here in Sarasota, they're still building. They're still building east of 75. And look, one thing I've not even touched on because it's not been on any of these websites is don't be afraid to negotiate. Even though these sellers, even though these builders are not advertising, slashing their prices, doesn't mean to say that they're not willing to do it. Okay, because I guarantee a lot of them are, but they just don't want to advertise it. You know, they have a lot of stock to shift, And if you've got a good buyer's agent or you're very savvy in negotiation, you'll be able to get a lot of these incentives if that's what you want, as well as a price chip on the overall purchase. So yeah, definitely don't be afraid to negotiate in this market. The pendulum has certainly swung your way as a buyer compared to what it was a few years ago. And don't be afraid to swing it. Don't be afraid to just use that leverage. What's the worst they can say? No. Don't be afraid to get cheeky. And that's what I advise people. Well, look, that wraps up the video really. So I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope I've given you some food for thought. And if you are considering buying, have got any questions at all about this video, anything like that, leave it in the comments below. I'm more than happy to reach out and answer any questions you might have. My contact details are in the description below. But other than that, if you like this video, I'd really appreciate a like. And if you want to hear more of content like this, by all means, subscribe to the channel. All right, thanks a lot. See you soon.